The next presentation is on OTT, over the top. What is OTT? Well, Lori's going to explain all of that to us. Lori Kennedy is actually, she's a member of our section and has been for quite a few years. I've seen her at quite a few industry events, and I thought of calling her and asking her to come to talk to us about OTT, cord cutters, cord nevers, whatever. Lori Kennedy is founder and principal consultant at Sapphire Leadership in operation since 1996. Prior to this, she spent 13 years at CTV television network in a variety of roles, including systems developer, systems development manager, and IT director. As a certified management consultant, or change agent, Lori is a catalyst for change, bringing strong leadership and methodology to the project team she works with. Much more than a project manager, her skill set includes business planning, process engineering, IT design, implementation, and change management. With many years of experience and lessons learned, Lori has developed a successful approach to planning and managing change initiatives with multiple project tracks and disciplines woven together to achieve the final transformation. Key focus, leading internal change teams. She has worked within broadcasting for over 20 years, but also in other industries, including consumer healthcare, pharmaceutical, and call centers, focused on customer relation management and Salesforce automation applications. She's worked for Sportsnet, CDTV/Omni, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and the Shopping Channel. Lori?
Well, good evening, and thank you very much for having me here today. I very much appreciate the opportunity to talk about a topic that's very near and dear to my heart and probably to yours, professionally and personally. So, what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about over-the-top TV. Now, that's a term that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. In essence, I'm going to talk about anything to do with video or content that is traditionally in the broadcast environment and how that is, how new services are playing out on the internet. So first off, just going to talk about what is TV today. More so from a terminology perspective, there's a lot of different terms out there, and I think people use them a lot interchangeably. So I'm just going to set the stage for the presentation to be consistent in terminology. After that, I'm going to talk about some factors that are influencing the changes and in terms of the industry and what's going on the internet. And then some examples. Again, it's not a comprehensive list. It'll just be some examples. I don't think we have enough time here to go through everything that's going on. It's also a moving target. I have put a couple of new things that's happened over the last week into the presentation, but who knows, I could have missed something. This is how fast things are moving. And then just to wrap it up in terms of there are still standards evolving in terms of the TV of tomorrow. And I'm just going to highlight some things to keep an eye on. So what is TV today? Well, I've heard the term broadcast TV, linear TV, live TV, and from my understanding, all these are based on a linear schedule or playlist. There's also the term pay-per-view, video on demand. There's also SVOD, all of that. I'm not going to use all those terms. I'm just going to keep it simple and call it video on demand. Live, the term live, from my perspective, means live events. So either sports, news, anything that's happening live, but often we'll hear the term live broadcast TV feeds. Just leave it at that. And then the term video playout versus streaming. I view them as the same thing. Playout is a term that's traditionally used in our world, more SDI environments. And the term streaming has sort of come up or grown up through the IP environments. But really it's a play out of the show. For over the top, and for the sake of this presentation, I'm going to use these terms. So linear TV refers to anything that's based on a schedule or playlist. Video on demand will refer to pay-per-view or just video on demand. Video streaming is like an IP playout. Video download is downloading the whole entire video file to a device prior to playout. And then live streaming, This is one area where you get the live, where I found people talking and they're talking about different things. From my perspective, live streaming means content that's available at a very specific time that is fed, and that feed is recorded, or it's a file that's recorded, and then prior to streaming, it's formatted, reformatted, and streamed back out. So it's really about a quick turnaround. All right. So factors influencing the changes that we're seeing today. Consumer habits definitely are key. TV everywhere, that's not new. Content rights. Content rights are a very big topic, and it's definitely going to impact what we're going to see over the next few years because of existing or old content right agreements. Advertising. We touched on advertising, so I'm going to touch on it again from a little bit different perspective. And then data and measurement. That's driving a lot of interest on TV networks to be closer to getting that data versus using services. All right, so the consumer, viewing habits. We've all heard cord cutters, cord shavers, and cord nevers. We're certainly not in a single service world, so people have options, and they are choosing to either never get a cable subscription, or to cut back, or to cut it completely. A lot of this is due to the high cost of the traditional TV packages. It's a lot of money, and I don't believe it's necessarily that people don't want to spend money. It's the value for the money, and these packages that cable companies offer are just so all-encompassing. And people, again, will pay for content, but they don't necessarily want the big bucket. One of the things that's keeping people on cable or satellite is sports. That's still one thing that is a first run or live game, live events are only offered through these providers. And of course, we all prefer video on demand versus a linear schedule. When we want to watch a show, we want to watch it now. There's a convenience factor, and also talking about all the different devices. Not everybody's tied to the family television. Binge viewing, watching TV episodes back to back. I liken it to like reading a good book. I don't know that I like to say that I binge TV, but I do watch multiple episodes back to back. Like I sit down when we'll read a book, for several hours. And I've watched more series on Netflix than I have on traditional television because of the fact that I can do that. Also looking at the consumer is the shifting demographics. I always like looking at these types of charts. Millennials are much written about and closely watched. They are considered the main cord cutters or cord nevers. According to the research that I have read, they are the main consumer of TV, that demographic group. So definitely a group to keep on watching. A new group, Gen Z, is growing up. They're referred to as plurals, and they're definitely going to view the world in a different way. They're the first group to have the technology that's in place today from a very early age or even at birth. And so for them, it's a norm. So it's a norm to have all these smart devices. And these two groups are going to be the main demographic groups, the main body of people that are going to set the stage for the future television, or driving force. TV everywhere. Not new. I don't even know that I need to talk too much about it. It's about having all this content, all the different distribution channels, and then all of the myriad of devices and operating systems that the content needs to land on. I also want to in terms of TV everywhere, just mention that second screen apps or companion apps. I think this is also a driving force in some of the new standards that you're going to see that are in the works today. A lot of it has to do, I think there are some second screen applications going on out there, but they're very detached one from the other. There needs to be more synchronization between the devices and then a way of measuring what's going on between a primary screen and a secondary screen or device. Also the term primary, we used to think primary was the main television set in the home. I think primary depends on where you are and who you are. So primary for an adult could be your living room television, secondary could be the laptop. Primary for a student could be a laptop in their dorm, secondary being their smartphone. From a family perspective, again, it could be back in the home, and then there's multiple secondaries, depending on who, the children versus the parents. And then also, not just TV, but to consider live events. You're live in a stadium. There's a companion app, not necessarily called Second Screen, that they can use their smartphone to get additional information about, let's say it's a sporting event, sporting statistics, and a variety of things. So it's there, it's sort of lingering. It's I've been watching it for a couple of years, second screen, examples of second screen applications. They've sort of stalled a bit, more so from a technology perspective, but I think you'll see it come up again in a couple of years. A bigger way. Content rights. In the traditional broadcast environment, there still are a lot of legacy TV agreements. They are traditionally per TV network or specialty channel or clusters of that, ownership groups. The rights within the agreements are country-based, regional, or market-based, so there's geographic restrictions. There's also been platform or device restrictions, so it's only been on traditional TV that you could air things. And then, of course, they're geared towards mass distribution, so broadcast, the true sense of broadcasting. And then there's typically associated with that is the number of rights associated, so you can only air so many rights over a period of time. With new players and the agreements changing, those geographic boundaries are broadening, so it's now we're looking at rights within a whole country or within the world or a number of countries on all platforms, devices, more video on demand and unicasting written in. Long term, I believe the internet or over the top is creating a level playing field, so it's more like a retail model, and I'll touch on that as we go through a few more slides. The consumer has more options, and there will be more channel brands. So TV networks you can relate to as a channel brand, and more original owned content, which is giving the owners, obviously, or the channels who own them, those broad rights that they want. Advertising. So we've touched on advertising already a little bit, but just to talk about addressable TV, I'm sure you've all heard about dynamic ad insertion. It's also referred to as addressable ads, as well as data-driven ads. And what's important here is you're separating the ads from the programming. In traditional TV broadcasting, you have the broadcast log, you have the programming, and then you have the commercial breaks. So the ads are quite tightly tied into the programming. The trend is to separate the two so that you can measure both, or you can insert obviously different commercials within the content. This obviously allows more flexibility in targeting. You can still do mass targeting at the national, regional, or local levels, but you also have the ability in the over-the-top world, or the internet world, to have specific consumer profiling and do direct marketing as well to them. Programmatic advertising. This is another term that's come up over the last year or two. It's sort of been born out of the digital world. It is a term used across all the digital platforms, so desktop, mobile, social, out-of-home, print, radio. And it really is being driven by the advertiser and agency world for a desire for more efficient practices. On the digital platform, there's so much volume that to deal with it as they're dealing with it in terms of the traditional broadcast world, where there's still a lot of manual practices, is just not feasible. So there are new best practices being created. There are still problems in terms of measurement and actually getting it out there. So there's a lot of things to iron out, but there are being best practices starting. And there are discussions that have started specifically last year in 2015 where they believe or they want the advertiser agency world want to sort of push that on into the traditional TV world, so more like a disruptor. That definitely is going to affect internal operations and systems that are in place right now, because those operations and systems in place are very broadcast log, program schedule, very specific inventories, and no external access to those systems. All right. Data measurement and research. It's going to carry on from advertising, but also to deal with content. Traditional research, even done today, was originally based on an over-the-air model. So sample data with diaries and people meters. Very program focused. This is becoming the theme of past, so not exact. So, and then today's world of viewing is very fragmented across multiple devices, and in this kind of world it's very tough to measure. Now there are a lot of new research companies coming up, and there's a lot of new ways to measure, but that even in its measurement, I believe, are still somewhat fragmented. Advanced measurement, a lot of terms around this. I like the term advanced measurement. The content owners and advertisers ideally would like return path data or exact data. So yes, there are still the ComScores, there's still AC Nielsen, there's still Numeris out there, but what they're finding, the over-the-top providers are finding, is they get exact data when they're closer to the customer facing. And with that exact data, they can derive their own measurement of content and ads separately. They can also do their own trends in consumption, and they can actually find out their own reach if they're doing advertising on their sites. So they're getting a lot more push from the agency advertiser world and a lot more push from the consumer world. So traditional TV broadcasting in the past has really been the one in the driver's seat, and it's changing. So before I get into examples of some over-the-top examples, I just want to touch on traditional TV, again, more from a terminology perspective, because we're going to look at some examples in Canada, but also in the US. So cable and satellite, so the Bell, Rogers, Videotron, Comcast of the world. In Canada, we use the term BDU to describe like the Rogers, so broadcast distribution undertaking. In the US, they use the term MVPD, so which means multi-channel video programming distributor. They also use the term pay TV, so they're all synonymous for what I'm talking about here. There's some variations with regulatory rights between the two countries, but we're not going to get that deep today. We also have the TV network world, which includes conventional, specialty digital channels. I'm also going to use the term channel brand, because you're going to see how those are evolving on over the OTT. And to represent traditional channels, but also to represent the new types of channels, especially, let's say, in the sporting world, where there's network types or channel brands evolving. Also, just to note, many people believe that the consumer thinks of channel brands, not cable and satellite companies, when looking for content, so I think that's also going to have an impact on how things evolve on the internet. general trends. So I'm going to, through my examples, I'm going to look at it through subscription, the buy, rent model, and then the free model. So in the subscription model, so that's with or without ads, this is where you're seeing the traditional TV providers offering new services. There are also OTT providers only, which is your Netflix, Hulu, and Sling TV. And they offer both video on demand and linear TV services. There's also the buy, which is an ownership or rent, pay-per-view or rent for a rental period that's evolving on the internet. And it's an evolution from retail stores, from cinemas, and from the studios themselves, so the DVD, the Blu-rays. It's worth mentioning here because that's where you're getting the same content now on the same platform, that level playing field, competing with the new services that are coming from this old technology, older platforms. So over-the-top providers, iTunes, Amazon, and Google. Free, there's a lot of free out there. Free could be free in terms of TV networks having their own websites and offering segments or episodes free. There's a lot of rights around that, so some do, some don't. It's quite of a mixed bag. There's also a lot of niche channels that you're going to find. YouTube has quite a few, well, not quite a few. They're like one of the main players of free. I'm going to get in it in a minute, so I'll hold off on that. There's also Buzzard TV and Pluto TV, which are good examples of free channels. All right, over-the-top subscription within Canada. I thought I should mention this particular slide. I'm not going to stay on it for too long. For early support of TV everywhere, it's worthy noting that your typical BDU has offered or have developed, and though they all vary in terms of what offerings they have attempted to offer different services that are considered internet-based or mobile-based. Call it over the top. The key one that's just was announced last week, Shaw Free Range TV. It's quite interesting. Sad to say, it's only free to Shaw subscribers only, or it's just offered to Shaw subscribers, even if you're willing to pay for it. They're offering over the top linear, so 80 linear TV channels and 30,000 video on demand titles. And it will be available on mobile devices, so this is a mobile service offering. So they're focusing on Apple iOS and Android devices. And what they're, in their marketing, what they're also saying, so when you're out and about, this is for mobile, and you want to watch your TV, linear TV, you can use it on a wireless device through the cell network or through one of their 70,000 Wi-Fi hotspots. I was actually quite surprised, didn't realize they had that many hotspots.
How many did you say?
And the 70,000?
Yes.
Is that true? Yeah.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
It's
I thought I heard you say something else.
Oh, no, but we all need to move to the West Coast.
Yeah, another good aspect of that is that you can download and then watch it later.
Right, so select content, not everything.
Yeah.
So that's the true over-the-top model, like the true, watch it, stream it, or download it. So it's certainly interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they allow that outside of the Shaw subscriber world, of the traditional cable satellite networks.
Yeah, it's a push to retain your cable subscription, right?
Yeah, yes.
So,
So this is, yes, but it could be a stepping stone to not, right? So they're laying the foundation.
so
Also within Canada is Rogers NHL Game Center Live. This was a big deal that happened back a year or so ago. So Rogers has the rights in Canada for 12 years, amazing. for anything NHL on all platforms. What they're doing in market, live games are still only provided on the traditional linear TV, so either cable, satellite, or over the air. But they do have the over-the-top VOD streaming service, which allows you to view any live, out-of-market, or national games, playoffs, plus any full replays of every game. And it's accessible to everyone in Canada. It can be free with some existing Rogers packages or subscribers packages. But if you don't have that, it's there's a monthly pass and a half-season pass. And it's available on the whole variety of platforms and devices. Now, we can't talk about over-the-top TV without talking about Netflix. And they've made some big announcements since last week as well at CES. So Netflix is worldwide, offered in Canada. It came into Canada in 2011, and I'm paying $7.99 per month. So is it still that?
Me too.
Yep. It originally started back in 1999, US only, delivering DVDs. So it's come a long way. In 2000, last year, as of the end of December, they were in 60 countries. As of January 6th, last week, they went live with 130 more countries, so they're up to 190. So they're pretty much worldwide, with the exception of China. And they're still working on it. So that's pretty amazing. So today the numbers are approximately 70 million subscribers. That's fairly significant. And I'm sure pretty much everybody in here is a Netflix subscriber? Some?
Definitely not.
Yeah, we're one of
I never watched it.
I really
Yeah.
subscribe.
Yeah, well, it's amazing how far they've gone. In terms of their programming, they acquire a lot of their programming. The rights vary per country. What they're finding is they're having challenges with those content rights across all the different country lines. They are evolving with their own country. They're becoming more of a channel brand in that sense. And they're doing global production. So they're not just, producing out of the U.S., distributing it around the world. They are doing it based on different countries, different countries, different ethnic backgrounds, the whole bit, which is great. As with any over-the-top offering, and I'm going to say it and sometimes not say it, they all have direct access to viewer data if they're frontline. So Netflix, one of the key things for them is they have been able to analyze the viewer habits and consumption habits over the last few years. So they know what works and what doesn't work and what their audiences are selecting in terms of playout. So they do feel they have a hand up in terms of what productions they should produce that are of interest and that content providers want. They don't do any advertising today within their site. Competition to them in Canada, Show Me, Crave TV. Initially, these services started up where you had to have, the cable subscription. Show Me now is available to anyone across Canada. And as of this month, though I don't believe it's gone live yet, I don't know if there's anybody here from the Bell, Crave TV is supposed to be the same, where it's going to be available all in Canada. Both acquire programming, so they're dealing with content rights there. I think Bell is trying to get a bit of a niche here. I think there was an announcement just a month or two ago about them giving the Canadian rights to HBO and Showtime's past live full rights. So that's where you're seeing things shift. Broader geographic, more, I don't know, one word to use the word niche, but more focused in programming. When you go look back to what's happening in Canada or even the US today, you've got a lot of MVPDs and BDUs that are pretty much distributing the same content just across geographic regions. What you're getting is fewer players, broader geography. Within the US, we're shifting over to the US now. I thought this was a very good example of the first TV network or channel brand that is direct to the consumer. So Showtime last year went live, USA only, but right across USA, with an online, over-the-top linear service. And basically what they're doing is they're live streaming both their East and West Coast feeds that they do for their cable channel out through an over-the-top service. $11 per month direct.
With ads, right?
Nope,
No ads?
not that I'm aware of. No. It's also offered via Hulu, which is a video deal. I'll talk about that in a minute, for $9, so a bit of a discount. So that's significant, just the fact that they haven't gone through, any sort of middleman there. Hulu, again within the U.S., this is a service that is owned by Disney, Fox, and Comcast. It was a startup in 2008. It's only available in the U.S., but also overseas military. This is a blend here. This one is a mix between primarily subscription, but depending on what your subscription rate is, if it's $7.99, they will show certain ads, and if it's $11.99, no ads. It was originally created as a video catch-up service for ABC, Fox, NBC, but then they, over time, acquired programming. So initially, actually, it was free, just as a catch-up service, and then they acquired programming, had a larger inventory, went subscription. They, too, like Netflix, are evolving with their own programming. They, again, understand that they have more control if they own the complete rights to the programming. They are also developing a very large library of Hispanic content. So they're carving themselves out some space there. The odd thing in this is that in 2015, they've adopted they allow Showtime as an add-on, but it is a linear channel. So I don't know how far they're going to go in terms of how many linear channels they'll add. They do want to expand worldwide, and there is a presence in Japan today. Sling TV, another one that came to life last year. Everybody here heard of Sling TV, which is different than the Sling box? Same idea, similar. Sling TV is owned by Dish Network, satellite service in the U.S. Startup last year. They offer, it's a true, what I would consider one of the first true over-the-top MVPDs. Why they came to be is they're trying to target the cord nevers, cord cutters, and the idea of supplementing other viewing habits, including those that like to use the over-air service, so digital antennas. It's available right across the USA. For $20 a month, they can get a core package, which are 20 linear channels that are not over the air. So they do not offer any over-the-air channels on their service. For $5 a month add-on, again, similar to the cable package, that you can have a theme package, and then another little twist here, for $15 a month add-on, you can have HBO Now, which is a new service offering as well. Monetization, they're a mix between subscription and ads. They receive the same feeds as their satellite service does, Dish Network, but without ads, so they have their own ad avails. And they can sell them as mass ads across the country and nationwide, or they can hyper-target and do addressable ads. So there's that shift there. So they're offering a new service to advertisers. And then again, they also have direct access to their data now. MLB, Advanced Media. Have we all heard of that? They've made quite a leap the last year or two. They were a startup actually, they were an internal service startup back in the 2000s. They were dabbling in a lot of things over the years. Today, they're a separate business. They own and operate MLB radio and baseball channel. And what's most important, especially with this presentation here, is that what's key is that they've built such a solid infrastructure in terms of over-the-top delivery of video that they have an offering of a back-end infrastructure to TV networks and channel brands. So basically, they'll white label services. So HBO is one of them. Their own MLB TV is another. They also offer services beyond that. I think they're actually they're in the process of trying to rename or rebrand themselves, because can you ever say ML-BAM this doesn't sound right. Is it MLB-AM? So today, clients include quite a number of sports leagues. So Major League Baseball, Minor League Baseball, National Hockey League, the PGA, and these are all white label. So they're using their back-end infrastructure, very different than an MVPD or VDU model where they're like customer facing. These guys are not customer facing, they're back-end. And then the TV networks. Yes Network, WWE, Watch ESPN, and this is, they power HBO Now. Now HBO Now, traditional over the top, where you don't go to their website like you do Showtime, but you have to get it through your traditional smart devices, Roku, Apple TV, or in this case, Sling TV. So, something to watch. All right, moving into the buy or rent. These are traditional online retail outlets. So Apple iTunes, Amazon Video, Google Play. You can buy movies, TV series on these sites. Google Play and Apple are available in Canada. Amazon Video, you can only buy through Amazon, Blu-ray, and DVDs today. But they all offer, if you can access them, they also offer streaming and download services. Continuing with the buy or rent, ultraviolet. Everyone here heard of ultraviolet? Or seen the little logo on if you've bought DVDs or Blu-rays actually, more so, like for Christmas if you've bought them. So ultraviolet is something that came to be through a consortium, Digital Entertainment Consortium Ecosystem. It's a 2008 startup, and the purpose was to develop an online content locker to manage digital rights. As of last year, over 22 million UV users around the world, so not insignificant. Today, they are an alliance of 85 companies, mostly driven by film studios or TV studios, retailers, consumer electronic manufacturers, ISPs. We also have cable. In the early days, actually, Netflix was part of this consortium, but then they backed away when they felt they wanted to go more in this subscription model. So this is for an own rent model. The digital rights locker, we can get on there and create an account. It's free, and we can have access up to 5 members to the same account or same library. DCE also has developed file standards for video streaming and downloading to the myriad of devices and operating systems out there. And so those standards also fly standard in terms of authentication, and then they're common file format. Online retail streaming services can link to your single UV library. So you have one library, you can buy content even on a DVD, a Blu-ray. You can buy it through the Cineplex store, you can buy it through Cinema Now. As long as you've linked each of these online accounts to your UV account. Anything that you purchase or rent will be available within your UV library to your family members and on all the variety of devices. So it's a digital copy. It's important to note, I've played around with it quite a bit. It's still evolving. Some of the user interfaces are easier than others. Not all titles are available within the UV world. Adoption is growing by studios and by the consumer. So I found actually, just from my own playing around with it, that Flickster and Sony Pictures, they'll actually show you, in Canada, a complete list of what's in your library. Cineplex pretty much only shows what you've bought within Cineplex. They'll show you certain things. They'll show you what's in your library, but they won't necessarily be able to stream or download. Cinema Now is another good option where you can buy and rent. And notice how Vudu is Walmart, Cinema Now is Best Buy, Flickster actually is a Time Warner company. And Sony Pictures, you can't buy through Sony, but you can access your library through their website and stream or download. So it's another option. It's an option for those who prefer to own the content. So no matter what subscription you have to what service, you're always vulnerable to whatever they have in their inventory. Now those inventories are growing, but sometimes there's content that's not there.
Does this mean you buy the physical Blu-ray disc?
No, this means this means that you could go into a store, Best Buy, buy a Blu-ray disc,
Okay.
sorry.
And they put it in a database somewhere and it gets access.
Right, so if you buy a Blu-ray disc that has the UV logo on it, and it'll have a redemption code. And so when you get home, you can go into one of these sites or go into UV Direct and you can put that redemption code in and it'll automatically show in the library.
Okay, is that, no, so that means that you don't have, you can see the DVD you bought, physically bought, you can see it on another device through a streaming service.
Exactly. Or you can buy it, Flickster doesn't offer a buyer, Sony does, but Cineplex, Cinema Now, or Vudu, if you go in there and buy, and you've linked that account, like Cinema Now account with your UV account, it will automatically show up in your UV account.
And what happens if whoever you bought that thing never loses the rights to that video, you lose the thing you bought, right?
Pardon me?
Well, I think that was happening with, was it Amazon Books or something like that? If they
Oh,
lose
even
the
if they
right-
had some problems with it?
Yeah,
Well,
they just grab it out of your device and say, oh, you don't have that anymore, you will be paying for it. That's that thing will happen here too, unless you have the actual physical piece.
Well, there's two things here.
No guarantees, right?
If you notice, in like Cineplex offers UV content, so content that is UV can be in your UV library. It also offers non-UV content. So they'll always have, if you purchase something through there, they have, so you're not just going to have it in your UV library, you'll have it at the point of sale. So either it's a point of sale on a disc, or it's the point of sale on the retail outlet, online retail outlet. If you're assuming if there's software issues within the
Well,
UV
that's
library. But that's with
probably-
any.
Well, that's probably going to be a problem with them market acceptance, is the fact that there has been a history of this type of business model where you supposedly buy something and all of a sudden you don't know anything yet. It's not there.
Yeah.
That's a problem
Yeah.
because you have no guarantees with this business model as a consumer.
Other than your point of purchase.
Well, yeah. if you
Which is
just- if you
probably
imagine
why
that the
Ultraviolet
physical-
doesn't do point of purchase, but the other stores do. So you have your point of you'll have your receipt, you'll have your proper.
Yeah, but that didn't help the guys with Amazon Books.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
They never got the refunds already.
So, again, if you purchase it online and it is tagged UV, it'll automatically show up in your inventory. So anyway, there's certain things going. I've played around with it. I find it quite interesting. I
It's
don't
just,
necessarily want to own everything I watch though.
Just to follow up that point a little further then, does the UV library recognize an end user license? So in other words, regardless of who you actually bought it from, does that library say you have an end user license?
You own it.
You own it
that
as an
copy.
end user license?
Yes,
So then presumably if one of those stores went out of business, no longer matters.
no,
Because, so as long as the UV library doesn't disappear on
Yeah.
you, then your license is recognized.
I believe so, because I've done a little testing here. I bought some Blu-ray discs, 2 or 3 of them actually. And I bought 2 out of Cineplex and I bought 1 out of Vudu. And I can see all of them through Flickster, through Sony Pictures. I can see all of them through all of them actually, but they're recognized within the library and not necessarily the service that you bought.
Does the library itself actually do any playback, or do you have to go to one of the sites?
You have to go through a service provider. Today, anyway. And there's some restrictions around the service providers. I bought something out of Vudu, but I can't play it back. But if I go into Flicksters, I can play it back. So there's some rules out there that are lingering or not tight. And your best access is through a desktop interface, I find, is the widest open. Some of these, like Flickster, actually Cinema Now, they're available through either smart TVs or smart devices, Roku or whatever, your Blu-ray players. But for some reason, there's some, it's not as smooth as it
So how
hopefully
do you
will
play this
be.
back on your primary device, which has to be your 40-inch flat screen TV? How would you play that back? You have to hook up the computer to it?
Well, I've been playing mine back through, I have a smart TV, I play it back through Cinema Now. Or Flickster. Flickster's on most
Yeah.
smart TVs.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, free. Well, I put YouTube here because I've considered YouTube free, but I've come to realize that there's much about YouTube that's not free. They offer free and paid subscription channels. They offer free and paid content, so either shows or episodes, movies. There are not so much movies, I can't say I've seen movies on there. Free content in terms of show segments, so the likes of CBC or CTV. I've seen Rick Mercer, there's a lot of segments, not full episodes, but segments on there, free. And there's a lot of shows that show a lot of offline that never hit a show as supplementary. So it's quite interesting. Of course, then, in what they started off with was a lot of niche channels. So TED Talk, golf, golf or niche specific channels. I don't think I have enough time in the day to really look at everything that's in there. It's quite expansive. One of the channels that's on there is called BuzzR TV. It's come out of Fremantle Media in California. And what they're doing is they're playing around. They have 40,000 retro vintage game episodes that they're playing around with. They're creating new productions as a spin on the old. And so they're creating new shows. They're also creating, time capsules or, clips of funny parts. And a bit of background bios on stars, people who were stars. So another niche. Some of them are funny. Another thing that you might find interesting is Pluto TV. It is not within YouTube, but much of the content that you'll find on there is from YouTube. They have 120 linear channels, so they're not, anything to do with traditional TV. They are micro-targeting niche markets. And they have a staff of in-house curators that create program guides and lineups, daily lineups. And as I said, much of it comes from YouTube. What's key for them is that they can spontaneously spin new channels. An example here would be when Leonard Nimoy passed away. They set up a Star Trek channel that they started putting videos on and content that they were curating from the internet. It's interesting. And then there's many more examples, I'm sure you have. Okay, so as a wrap up, the standards in terms of over-the-top or internet are still evolving, and the impact on the traditional TV models. Some expect that more change is going to happen in the next 5 years than has happened in the last 50 years. What I would suggest is these 3 items here to keep an eye on them. First one is regarding programmatic TV and advertising. That first came to my attention last year in terms of the impact and the initiative to have traditional TV evolve to some of the new best practices that are occurring on the digital platforms. Best practices, new practices. Anyway, out of that, the Television Bureau in the U.S., TVB, have drafted a broadcast linear TV programmatic guidelines. So probably worthy watching that as it grows, because I do believe that's the start of the evolution of the traditional TV broadcast management model. And that's going to affect a lot of your systems and what goes in-house. The other thing relating to measurement is the SIM taxi initiative. Talk about that in a second. And then ASTC 3.0, which I'm sure all of you should know about. Everybody here know about the SIM taxi? Okay, so SIM stands for Coalition of Innovative Media Measurement. It's a group that was founded in 2009 in the U.S., driven by content providers and advertisers and media agencies. The key here is about measurement and the focus on return path data and cross-platform video measurement. So they're not happy with how things are happening today. TAXI stands for Trackable Asset Cross-Platform Identification. It's an open, they're pushing for an open standard naming convention like a UPC code for video to be embedded within the video essence itself. The objective is for it to travel with the video across an entire ecosystem and be able to deliver return path information back. Benefits include ad insertions, tracking both ads and content separately, and this is what will help in terms of synchronizing the second screen or multi-screen activities. SIM is together with SMPTE on this. In 2014, there was a recommendation out of the 2 groups together that audio watermarking to bind the unique identifiers would be the way to do it. And in 2015, last year, SMPTE sent out an RFP for proposals on the specifics of how that would be done. So I haven't found anything in terms of the status of that. It's certainly something to watch for. ASTC 3.0. Goal is to have a standard by 2016 with worldwide application. It's the whole terrestrial standards. Of course, AT 3.0 is the key thing here is harmonization with mobile and broadband. It will only utilize an IP-based transport layer, so no more MPEG-2, and then broadband and mobile friendly. So this standard is to help with multiple alternative camera angles, picture-in-picture, multi-screen, and companion device support. So here's another standard dealing with companion device support. And this is definitely one, if not one of the main reasons why we need an IP infrastructure, fully IP infrastructure, but that's a whole other topic, right? So that's pretty much it. So thanks very much, appreciate coming in. Any more questions?
might be kind of a big one for you. But obviously, we're talking here now about the debundling of cable channels.
Right.
I'm wondering if the sky is falling, of course, all these channels are going to disappear, bills are still going to go up. I'm wondering what your thoughts are in terms of channels that can't make it moving more to the over-the-top model then, and actually going on the internet or something like that.
So channels that are not strong brands?
Strong enough to make it
Collection?
selectable over the cable packages when they become selectable as one channel.
What do I think will happen to them?
Sure.
What do you think is going to happen to them? So if you think about the channels, yeah, that's a tough question. There's so many channel offerings on the cable and satellite services today. And what you're seeing in terms of what is showing up on the internet or on the over-the-top world is the strong brands. The strong channels that have a solid selection of content that people want and identify with the channel. There's a lot of channels out there where I think they had an original intent, a niche perhaps intent, but then to make money they've put other things in there. So are they going to survive and people want them? Are people actually watching them today? So I'm not going to specifically answer your question. Should they die a natural death? I don't know.
Well, they'll survive. They'll survive if they can find models to pay for the content that they're delivering. Because I think in the digital media space and OTT space, it's still becoming very much about niche marketing. The big question is how we're going to pay for this content. Who's paying for this content if people aren't watching commercials anymore? So it'll just be interesting to find out what the new funding models are that are continuing to evolve within the digital media space to be able to pay for this content.
So they may, so what you might get, that's actually a very good point. What you might find is that in the subscription model, you're going to get the strong channel brands where people know and they have faith in that collection and they'll spend, X amount of money per month. And then you may have, which you're seeing in the free world, where you have those niche channels and they're ad supported. So what's paying for them is the ads on the side. So, I don't know. Andrew?
Any thoughts, Laura, on content discovery? There's so many different services with content. How as a consumer do you find all this stuff?
Yeah, that's hard. Word of mouth. So they talk a lot about social media and word of mouth driving a lot of that. In terms of what I was reading about Shaw and their new service, is that they're going to actually hone that a bit, and what they want to do is they're going to try and target content that they have in their library to the consumer based on the history of consumer consumption habits. So that's one thing. That's not everything. I haven't seen a lot actually of what I've read or searched in terms of really solid search engines and really solid improved ways of finding content. Because even in Netflix, sometimes I get frustrated. There's either too much or I'm not finding what I want, or the search isn't. I know it's there. I kind of forgot what it was called, but it's not working very well. So there's a lot of improvements in that area that need to happen in a big way. So that might be one.
It's a new business to get into.
Yeah.
Sure.
A search engine for content.
Yeah.
But the content providers and the advertisers, they want direct data. And they seem to be in a better driver's seat than they have in the past. Anyone else? Well, thanks very much.